as much as I love and know what to do about HR policies and protocols and programs, starting your own business, it's a different beast. And as much as people try to warn you of that, you really don't know it till you're in it.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. I am your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be a very informative one. Our guest is the owner of Essential HR and has worked with some of the biggest players in the restaurant, food service, and retail worlds as an integral member of the HR team. Laura Tolhoek, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
It's great to have you, and what a perfect time to be having a conversation about human resources and people and with everything that's going on in this world. And I'm really looking forward to that conversation. But before we get to that, Laura, please tell us a little bit about you and your career journey leading up to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, I'm the owner of Essential HR, and we have a team of HR rock stars who help small businesses attract and retain the best talent. Now, we think of small business as under 50. So a lot of our clients are actually between 5 to 20 people. So when we think small business, we actually think, those local businesses and local teams that, are small businesses. Because I know sometimes people refer to small business as 100 plus, but we love to give HR support in a hands-on and practical way to these individuals, these owners, these managers, to make sure that they have somebody to rely on and a partner when things come up to be able to support them.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. And, you've been doing this a while. What got you into this business?
So I grew up in a family who owned a small business, and I went through university, and I knew I wanted to be in business somehow. And I thought, I love people, so why not HR? And little did I know, loving people in HR can be two conflicting things sometimes, because HR can be very heavy and very policy driven and very, very black and white. And so I love bringing in that gray, and I love looking at both sides of it. So after university, I worked in some big corporate offices for what we like to call quick service or very fast-paced HR. And after a few years, I thought, I'm looking at my father's business, I'm looking at friends' business and thinking, even though they only have 15 or 20 people, they're still calling, they're still relying on me for support. And they still have questions that are, need the answer from a professional HR person. So I thought I really want to branch out and be able to help these small businesses, because they don't need a 40-hour work week HR person, but they do need somebody to help them with their risk management, to know that they're doing the right thing and to give them confidence in the next steps. So that's how we help our small business owners. And that's kind of how Essential HR started. And now we have I call them a team of rock stars, because we have some fantastic people who really get small business and who love HR. And we just love to partner with people in a way that they actually want to talk to us, because that's kind of the other thing that people get scared about with HR people.
And when you started your business, what were some of the challenges you faced building your own business in HR?
I think, as much as I love and know what to do about HR policies and protocols and programs, starting your own business, it's a different beast. And as much as people try to warn you of that, you really don't know it till you're in it. And so I would say definitely the highest points of learning were the sales, the marketing, and the financial side.
Mm. It's like that. I mean, our listener is small business owner, so they're the type of people you would likely work with.
Mm-hmm.
But you're also one of them. You're a small business owner and growing your business. It's always interesting to hear some of those challenges and as well breakaway points. There's always the setbacks, and then there's also the breakaway points where it's like things go your way all at once, and you have this a bit of a breakaway. What have been some of the breakaways in your small business journey?
I would say, when I was starting to bring on team members, it opened up new opportunities. So there was a very difficult time, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners have the same, where the bench work and the business building work are starting to collide. And you can only do one or the other. And I didn't go into this business to work 80 hours a week. A lot of the joy of having a small business, running a small business, is finding that balance. And so when I noticed that balance was off, I knew it was time to start hiring. And even for an HR professional, hiring can be scary. But once I brought on my first team member, it just opened up the doors, and I wasn't worried about taking on more new clients. And I wasn't worried about where would we find the time to do the work, because it gave us that flexibility and that confidence to know that we could get the work done in a timely manner.
Interesting way of saying it. Bench work. I don't know if I've ever heard anyone refer to the work in your business. We talk often about E-Myth, Michael Gerber's E-Myth, building a system-driven business, and it's the concept of working in your business or working on your business. And I really like that bench work because you're at the bench doing the work. Such an old school analogy of the work that we do, but those worlds colliding, definitely. So it's great to hear that you were able to overcome that challenge, and it's likely opened up. You have a team now, and you're rocking and rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? For all of the time and the worry and those getting over the understanding of sales, the understanding of marketing and finance, for all of that, it is so worth it at the end of the day to be able to see what we're building, to be able to invest in our team, and really to understand the balance and the joy of small business.
So true. Now, when you did hire, bringing in another person to help you with the bench work, that can also bring challenges, right? So and maybe talk a little bit about, that's what our listeners are doing and thinking about. It's like, well, how do I expand? They're going to bring on people. There's that whole challenge, but then there's also the challenges of having them do the work.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably an 80 hours from you. It's like you probably hit the nail right on the head most times. You bring somebody else in, are they going to hit the nail exactly the way? How did you deal with that, and what's that been like?
So my first initial thought was to subcontract, and I went out looking for individuals who were looking for subcontracting hours. And I looked at about 3 different people who were, kind of top of mind, because as you know, HR has so many different facets, and some people are specialists and some people are generalists. So I went out looking for a subcontractor, and the individual who I hired, she subcontracted for me for about 4 or 5 months on a part-time basis. And then we brought her on as a part-time team member, just to start building that loyalty, to start building that team feeling. So the process, I'll be honest with you, when I started looking for a part-time subcontractor, I hid behind it because in my mind, it wasn't full-time. And if it wasn't full-time, who would want it? Which was funny because I started the business because I initially didn't want to work full-time. I had 2 young children at home, and I wanted a way to balance my career with the family. So I hid behind the fact that it wouldn't be full-time hours and didn't really walk into the knowledge and the understanding that, listen, if I was someone who loved my career and loved what I did, but didn't want to do a 40 or 60 hour work week anymore, there's probably other people just in that same boat who are also passionate professionals who are looking to have that flexibility in their work as well. So once I started interviewing people, I started really standing in my own about this part-time work, this part-time flexibility and the life that it lets you build outside of the 9 to 5. So bringing on our first team member was really eye-opening in the fact that we were growing this team of people who had passions outside of their career, but were also fully passionate about what they did within their career.
So interesting. Now, we've had a tremendous year in 2020 in terms of COVID. What was that like for you and your business when COVID hit?
So for the business, there was a bit of an uptake in work because a lot of people needed somebody to rely on. Let's be honest, there wasn't a rule book for COVID back in February, March, and April. We were all kind of flying by the seat of our pants and trying to do the right thing as many times as possible. So there was certainly a busier uptick that kind of leveled out. And thankfully, it was only because of my team that we were able to continue on. There's a lot of us that have young families, so we had to really support each other in different ways because all of our families were at home. And, one too many Sharpies and markers were written on the walls where they shouldn't be as we all tried to manage the working from home. But from a client perspective, I really realized the benefit that we gave to our clients in terms of just being that shoulder to lean on. Because so many times we try to be strong for our teams, and there's nobody for that leader to help them through even just talking out situations that they may already know the answer to, but just need somebody to talk it through with them. So it was a very interesting time for us to build those relationships with our clients.
So interesting. And what, as you've seen it sort of carry on for most of this year, how have people fallen into the new routine of COVID?
Yeah, I definitely think there's, the new rules. There's new rules when it comes to staff morale. There's new rules when it comes to performance management. And I think one thing we often forget is the holistic side of health with all of this. So we've gone through, big highs and we've hit the lows and back up. And this does something to all of us, not just leaders and business owners, but it does something to our team. So we all hit these highs and these lows at different times. And so understanding that, we have to invest in health as a total package. Like what is the holistic health? So how are we helping people manage their stress? Does that mean backing off on certain things at certain times? Does that mean, providing additional benefits to our teams in terms of healthy eating snacks in the office? Does that mean looking at the financial health side and trying to find ways to help alleviate someone's financial health stress? Because let's be honest, not all of us have the really honor of having two working members at home. Some people only had one working spouse, and that is an additional financial stress that causes a physical stress. And what we start seeing is those physical stresses start becoming illnesses. And our productivity of our teams are going down and our mental health of our teams are going down because the stress is affecting us so greatly. So just being really attuned to the ups and the downs of the individuals on our team and knowing how to support them at the right time, I think is very important, not only looking back, but looking forward, because that fight or flight is not yet gone and it's still affecting us physically.
So true, and can be just this hidden catastrophic effect on people's well-being.
Yeah.
Now, you've got lots of business owners that you work with, and our small business owner listening today, running small business bookkeeping businesses, they have likely, working remote has been in our industry a conversation for a long time because a lot of the work that is being done can be done anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter where you are, everything's online. But yet there's always been this challenge of either the bookkeeping business owner doesn't want to embrace the technology or doesn't have a desire to do that, or whatever the case may be, and more likely the business owner has resisted that remote. They want to have people in their office, see people, those sorts of challenges. But COVID has changed this completely. People there was no choice, right? You have to work remotely, or there's been periods of time that you had to be working remotely. But with that come a whole bunch of challenges. Maybe talk about some of the challenges from a staff morale, work politics, job accountability, understanding the training of actually just being able to train people up on all of these different productivity tools and technology tools that you use. What have you seen?
Yeah. So they're definitely, the new rules of staff morale are very different, where we had those office lunches and those 15-minute water cooler breaks, that we gained that energy that we needed for the day and exchanged those conversations. And that's kind of gone out the window. And as much as virtual meetings are good for being able to see someone's face, it doesn't replace that energy exchange of the team sometimes. So finding ways to just do our best to help build that team together despite being apart is very important. So as people return to the office, I think my best pieces of advice for staff morale, because we're going to start seeing people go back to the office, and we're going to see some people in the team not go back to the office. And how do we balance that? So my favorite quote is, if one is remote, all is remote. And it's all about equalizing the playing field. Because if you've ever been in a meeting where you're the talking head on the screen while everybody else is all together, you can feel that inequality in the meeting. You don't get that same sense of energy and you feel left out. So as people return back to office and there's small groups of people meeting and one or two are still remote, I would highly encourage anyone to adapt a policy that if one person is remote, everybody goes virtual for the meeting as well, just to equalize that playing field and have everybody feel like they're involved at the same level. But there's also the team building and that aspect of things too. And I've seen some really great ideas out there. I've seen some companies who are doing virtual art classes with their teams. So sending all of those supplies ahead of time, or doing meal kits, sending out meal kits for lunches, just to let people know that, hey, we're still thinking of you. You're still a part of this organization, and building that bond between the organization, the manager, and the team. Or even cleaning services for houses. There's a lot of different perks. And that helps a little bit with morale. But the most important thing to help with employee engagement is going to be communication. During this time, we cannot under-communicate. There's no option but to over-communicate because of the distance, because of the type of communication we're using. If there's one thing to take away from this conversation for your listeners, it's that we don't have the luxury of under-communicating at this point. It's all about over-communicating.
Yeah, it's a good point. I would say most people don't do a good job of communication generally, and now it's an opportunity, and it's also a complete barrier if you're not communicating what's happening, how are things going, checking in with people. How have you helped people over communicate, really? And I shouldn't even call it over communication. It sounds negative. It's like communicate effectively during this time.
So I think it's understanding the levels of communication. So as a business owner, we are thinking about a topic or a task or a responsibility over and over and over again in our head. We're fleshing it through. We're finding out the way to do it, what makes sense. And then by the time we communicate that down to our teams, we've thought about it so many times that the one communication that we give, we don't understand how they haven't grasped it. So I would say look at different levels of communication. So we're looking at the verbal. We're looking at the, one person communicating to a team. We're looking at one person communicating one-on-one. We're looking at the written aspect of it. And we're looking at different levels because not everybody absorbs communication in the same way. And at the end of the day, the baseline of communication is it's up to the communicator to give the message. It's not up to the receiver to understand the message. The basis of the ownership of communication is on the person who is giving the communication.
It's along the same lines, the technology of communication. So there would have been a way people were communicating pre-COVID, and now there's technology being used to communicate post-COVID and current COVID. Have you seen companies, what technology have you seen companies embrace in order to communicate remotely?
Yeah, we have Microsoft Teams. We've used Slack on some instances. But I think there's also something that is to be said about how we use those. So for example, if it's going to take more than 2 minutes to have a Slack conversation, it's time to turn that thing to video, because there's something that's going to be lost in that communication that should be done verbally. So having little just safeguards in place in your communication. So you know what, this feels like a bigger conversation. Let's just push it over to video and get it done in a minute. Because we all know how many times we've wasted half a day in communication that really should have been a 3-minute phone call rather than 13 emails back and forth. So I would suggest just safeguarding your communication practices where you see that happening.
Yeah, it is. It's a challenge for one of the things we've embraced is Slack. And I've used other messaging tools. And I think the biggest challenge in adopting Slack has been just training people on how to use the tool. But if you don't know how to use it yourself, it's kind of hard to train other people. And I mean, there's an abundance of information and resources on how to do it online, but yet that someone still needs to digest all that and become an expert in using the tool to then train other people on how to use the tool. Have you experienced any of that, and how do you help people navigate through that?
We're actually right in the middle of that with our project management software. We have this fantastic project management software, but to get it up and running takes so much time up front, and it's going to save you time on the back end. But we're managing so many balls in the air, and it's just trying to figure out which one is important right now. So with something like Slack, where you're trying to get an adoption from your team to use it, which is a lot of the time one of the things you have to overcome, is just making sure that it makes sense to your team, so they understand the benefit of using it. So for example, some of our clients, they wanted to eliminate, they were still in office because they're deemed essential service, but they wanted to try to eliminate as much in-person conversation as possible, just to, keep that physical distancing. And it was really trying to teach the benefit of using this and changing the routine that is going to be the biggest hurdle. Because as a business owner, we might be all on board for a new technology, only to have it halted by the team that we have who just doesn't understand what the need for change is.
Yeah, so true. So true. I'm curious now, you've mentioned a project management software. Which software are you using?
We are using ClickUp.
music to our ears, and probably music to many people's ears listening. ClickUp has been very popular in our community of late, probably in the last 6-7 months. More than that, actually. It's probably been a good year where people have been talking about ClickUp. And so it's a very powerful tool, and many would have heard of it on our listenership. Yeah,
I look at it, I'm like, this thing is amazing. I just need to get it put together and build all the templates and all of that. So yeah, I totally understand overcoming those hurdles.
Well, it's amazing. Well, the thing changes every week, it seems daily almost, in terms of what it's adding, new technology. And it's very similar to Slack. It's, hey, this is great. It's so flexible that it can be built in many different ways. And so really, there's no clear experts out there that have figured it all out, because it's only been around for a very short period of time, yet it's very robust, very powerful, very predictable, which in itself is a challenge.
I think you're selling me on it even more and scaring me all at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, it's really transformed our business. And I think almost from a communication standpoint, being able to communicate inside, it's reduced my email leaps and bounds between Slack and ClickUp. And my email is almost like clear. It's crazy. But then when people send me emails, I miss them because I'm more hanging out in ClickUp and Slack. But really interesting to hear that you're embracing that technology. And I also thought, wow, project management. The clear communication around what it actually is. We often talk about workflow software, and ClickUp is a workflow software, but really, it's project management. We're managing projects, tasks within projects and projects. So it's just a word I haven't heard in a while. We always refer to it as workflow software.
That's funny.
Very cool. Well, I think with your business, Essential HR, I would imagine that many people don't even understand the benefit of working with an organization like yours because they don't know what they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the reasons why a small business owner would reach out to you in order for you to help them inside of their business?
So we have a couple different verticals of work that we do inside our business. So we have something called the HR Relief Program, and that's a monthly partnership. And it starts at 5 hours a month. And that's where we really help those small business owners from things like, Laura, I had somebody come into work with pink eye. What do I do about that? To Laura, one of our team members just had his second vehicle accident in a company vehicle. What do I do about that? Performance management questions. And I mean, we can talk about performance management during COVID as well, but just how to manage those star players, how to manage those maybe people who aren't cutting it players, or how to get a performance management system in place that really looks at goal setting versus performance reviews. So those are things that we do for our clients, as well as, recruitment. So I know the last thing that somebody usually has time for as a small business owner is to scale through 100 resumes that really don't have the experience that you're looking for, or sit through 10 interviews of somebody you automatically know within 5 minutes doesn't have the ability to do the job or the ability to really understand what your business is all about. So that's another way we help our clients. And compensation. Compensation is a big one right now as we kind of come into the end of the year. So what should we be paying? How should we be doing our performance, our salary reviews? And are we marketable? What are our competitors paying? So working on all of those things is what we do. So sometimes how you think of an HR manager would be within a larger organization. We just do that on a smaller scale for small business.
And I would imagine there's these misconceptions of what is going to be essential for a small business owner. Where would you say, or there's probably a ton of them, but what are some of the more prominent ones of like misconceptions or, gee, I didn't even know that was going to be a problem for small business owners when it comes to HR? It's like what are the big they don't know problems?
So the first one starts with the job offer. If you don't have a solid job offer, you're putting yourself and your business at risk. And I would say before anything, when we start with a new client, we make sure that job offer is solid, that it's updated with current legislation, and that it will protect them if that relationship was to end. So number one is that job offer. Number two, I would think, is all around the employer brand. And our employer brand is really all the things that make up what people think about us as an employer. So we know what, for example, Target is as an employer or as a company, but what do we think about them as an employer? What do we know? What are those assumptions? So even a small business needs to know who they are as an employer and what they offer as an employer and what their uniqueness is, or their elevator pitch, for lack of a better term, as an employer. And I think once you know that, it starts giving you the confidence to make those bold offers with people and to really sell yourself as an employer to not only, the job market, but to others, as to your clients.
Fantastic. And those are some big ones. It's often people overlook the importance of setting up a solid foundation for bringing people on, clarity, and making sure there's no assumptions, right? For both the owner hiring and the person being brought into the organization. So in terms of this whole going back to work, we've got infectious diseases protocols, we've got a return to workplace protocols, and people are going to be coming back into the office. I understand that you've created a resource for this very situation. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people don't want to fly blind when they're bringing their teams back to the office. So we've created a very simple 4-step process that anybody can walk through, and all the templates that you need in order to really flesh out what you want to be and what you want to do as an employer. So that document that we put together for your listeners is actually, the first thing is the risk assessment. So really taking an idea of what could possibly be the areas of opportunity that you want to have finalized to make sure that your return for your team is a success and is safe. And then the second is really understanding your protocols. So writing it out so that you know what they are, they're clear, and so your team knows what they are. The third part of it is talking to your team. So letting them know what your protocols are, because what you don't want is when your team returns to the office for them to think, there's things left undone, things that you haven't thought about. So sending out your protocols to your team and then sending out a questionnaire, asking them, is there anything that you would like us to relook at, or any additional protocols that you feel would be a good idea? And then the final is, just bringing back that phased return to the office, because maybe that looks like staggering days. Maybe that looks like team A, team B every other week. Maybe it looks like the most important people who need to be in a physical location come in first and everybody else staggers in. So having all of that in place in a simple format is what we want to provide to your listeners through our infectious disease documents. And that can be found at essentialhr.ca/successfulbookkeeper.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for that. It's amazing. What a great resource, very timely resource. And we, of course, will have that link. To find that link in our show notes, you can go to the website and click right over to Essential HR and get that download and have that as a resource in your business. Laura, this has been fantastic. I want to thank you on behalf of our listeners for your generosity in sharing your journey and some of the thoughts that we should be thinking about during this how do you say that word? Tumultuous time. And I've got like marbles in my mouth or something today. And thank you so much for that. It's a pleasure having you.
Oh, it was a pleasure being here. Thank you for having me.
And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.